A diary of a criminal lawyer. Hers are books ostensibly for children on a few very famous personalities of India. What are you placing on record? In alphabetical order, Amrita gets to answer first, I think.
Can you hear me? Yeah. What I am putting on record is the 10 cases from the life of one of the iconic lawyers in Kolkata, Mr. Ashok Mukherjee, late Ashok Mukherjee. He got the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Bar Association. And this book was written when he was bedridden with cancer. So he had a diary where he jotted down his feelings, emotions, his cases for 50 long years. And not many people knew about it, but since I am his niece, he used to sometimes tell me about it. So I thought that is a great idea to make this diary into a book. And it's 10 more very interesting cases from his life. So that's what I am writing about.
Okay, we'll come back to this later. Swati has written about personalities like Milkha Singh, like Jhalkari Bai,
and Savitribai
Savitribai
Phule
Phule,
and Birsa Munda.
Birsa Munda.
Okay.
And all of these people have been written about in the past, have been spoken about, written about, filmed, God knows what else, illustrated. So communication about them, there's no shortage of communication about them.
So I'll just.
What were you going to do that was new?
So as far as Jhalkari Bai is concerned, her story is not mainstream, not canonical, not conventional. Her story, in fact, she has not been written about at all. So what I'm trying to put on record is also these stories which have been erased from history. Okay, may I just read a little bit on the introduction which I've mentioned, which is, instead of saying it, I just want to read
absolutely.
it out. So
I think we'd all like that too, because I don't know how many, just let's do a quick show of hands. How many of you have heard of Jhalkari Bai before now? Zero, that is excellent. Please read.
So I'll just read what I've written in the author's note. When we are taught history in school, we never wonder who wrote the textbooks and what were their sources of information. Young readers are always taught to think of history as authentic and factual, never to be questioned. We are not encouraged to wonder why history is so heavily tilted in favor of battles, kings, acquisition of kingdoms and riches, while there is almost nothing about the lives of ordinary people, the poor and the women. Is history then just a record of stories of victorious men? Then what about her story, which records the lives of women? I feel very strongly that young readers need to know that there is perspective and politics in history writing. They need to know that not just women, but Dalits too have been ignored in history. When it comes to Dalit women, hardly anything is known about them from the pages of history. That is why Jhalkari Bai's story is so important. She doesn't find much space in the history of the 1857 rebellion, not even in the story of Rani Lakshmi Bai, who is placed on a pedestal for fighting the British. Dalit writer Ramdayal Verma writes, Yatra Tatra Sarvatra Milegi Unki Gatha ki Charcha, Kintu Upekshit Veer Varo ka Kabhi Nahi Chhapta Parcha. Everywhere you will find discussion on their deeds, but the Dalit heroes are never written about in the papers. So where can we find Jhalkari Bai's story? In Bhojla, where she was born, in its melas, in its songs and plays, in oral histories, and in the pages of popular Dalit literature. Her story is printed in booklets and pamphlets written in simple Hindi. They were not written by renowned historians, but by people you've never heard of. But that does not make Jhalkari Bai any less important than some of the well-known leaders who took on the British in 1857. So I guess that is also something that needs to be put on record.
Right.
These stories which have not come to the mainstream but needs to be written about and told to our young readers, we have to give them entire picture of what is happening, what has happened in history.
Which brings me to the point that the two of you were writing for entirely so-called different target audiences, a target readership. Any writer who starts out has a target readership in mind. And you had ostensibly two completely different target readerships, right? So I am finding it, but I am finding a few parallels here because the subject of the discussion is putting things on record. You were also talking, Amrita, when you're writing about your uncle's most, say, remarkable or significant cases, you're talking about things which normally people wouldn't talk about, right? We never actually get to know the stories behind the cases. There are several very landmark judgments, but nobody knows what went on behind closed doors. Have you been able to actually reveal that aspect, do you feel, in your book? Because it comes from a lawyer who's also a very careful person. Lawyers are notoriously careful people who do not reveal what, they're taught not to reveal secrets.
We have taken care so that the real people, the identity of the real people are not revealed. But yes, as you were saying, the landmark judgments, because he was one person who reversed two capital punishments in his lifetime. One story is there, that how he reversed it. And that is, I would say, something to know about, because we have no idea how that is usually done by a defense lawyer.
And this is the common ground I was talking about. Through these stories, you are actually revealing larger truths.
Absolutely.
Both of you, actually, because even when you're talking about Jhalkari Bai is somebody who is not part of the mainstream, but Milkha Singh or Birsa Munda or Jhansi Lakshmi, yeah, Birsa Munda, Jhalkari Bai, Savitri Bai Phule. They have been part of the mainstream. You are revealing sides to their character or things, stories of their life that were not known. Maybe you have taken that approach, have
So
you?
I think every person who's writing, that's why one story can be told in so different ways. So I think the person who's writing, that is very important, because if I am a woman, I will write it in a way. If I'm a Dalit woman, I will write it in another way. So all that I am will come into what I write about.
But you do not consider that biased interpretation. Is that a biased interpretation of history?
I think the word bias will come only when I'm a privileged person. But if I am not a privileged person, or I'm talking about a story of a person who has been suppressed and oppressed, then I wouldn't call that story biased. Even if I am not, I have been privileged myself, but I'm telling the story of a person who has been marginalized, then I wouldn't call that narrative biased.
Okay.
But
I'll ask
that's
you.
how I look at it.
Okay, fine. Which is, as a journalist myself, the next questions comes from a personal, from a personal space, from personal experience. As journalists, we are taught, trained to not put anything of ourselves into a story.
Absolutely.
Do not. Nobody cares about your opinion. Nobody cares about your viewpoint. You simply report what you see. Forget about coming to any conclusion. Here, both of you were writing about objective truths, right? You were writing facts. You're writing about history. You're writing about court cases, both of which are supposedly based on facts. How much of yourselves have you allowed to seep into these stories or tellings? I think Swati gets to go first. Poor thing. He's suffering from alphabetical discrimination. Okay.
it, I can't remember who said this, but also when I was writing as a journalist, I did not consciously allow this, but as an author, I allow myself more freedom to do that. I allow myself to come in, and I can't remember exactly who said this, but there is, somebody said that if there is an elephant and an ant, and you see that the elephant is, trapping or trampling on the ant, then you, and you're saying you believe in equality, then you're not being fair. So I allow myself to be there, to be within quote biased when
Take
it comes to a
sides.
situation
Take
like
sides.
that. Yes, I think that is fair.
Amrita?
That is being fair and not biased.
So, I think I am opposite Jago. I maintain my objectivity because I was at the Alipur Criminal Court yesterday, and every person I spoke to had an anecdote to share about Ashok Mukherjee. So, he was a person who was also a fantastic storyteller. Like, while he was sitting in the chamber, like, the stories he told, everyone knew. So, I had to stand at a distance and write my book. And now, when people who knew him read it, they say that we feel that it's him who's talking. It's him who's narrating. So, I wanted to achieve that.
You took
I
on
wanted
his
to
voice.
step back and let him rule, because it's his stories, his book. And since this is my first non-fiction, my earlier two books were Exit Interview and Museum of Memories were fiction. This was a very hard task to achieve, because with
Yeah, continue.
with fiction you can let your imagination fly, but with non-fiction you have to be really objective, and the facts. With a book like this, a small factual error can land you in real trouble. So I had to, because I did not get to recheck my facts with him because he was no more. So I had to go to his juniors, to different lawyers, to different people to check and recheck the facts to maintain the authenticity and objectivity.
That's fascinating. I think
I
this
think- may I
contrast is
just add
fascinating. Yeah,
something?
because you've done non-fiction in the past too.
Yeah.
And if for those who haven't read Swati's earlier, I would actually encourage you to do so, because children, there were a few elements in common. There were children in that story. There was struggle in that story, but it was a completely different perspective. It was a story probably written about children, for adults, possibly.
Actually, I've done two books. One is a non-fiction, one is a fiction on Maoists, on the Maoist movement. One is called The Out of War, which is on surrendered Maoists. So I think when we were discussing about being biased or being totally neutral, I think it would vary from one story to another. What kind of book we are working on. I think
exactly.
whether we are going to be, we should be distancing ourselves from the characters, or we tend to be, side with one of them. I think that would vary from a story to another story. So when I was working on Out of War, which is on the surrendered Maoists, and I went and met those people who had surrendered, and they were telling me their stories. And I had seen so much of suffering and so much of poverty that, those initial months and weeks and months, and I would say even more, some years I worked on it. So those were very, heartbreaking. So it is very difficult to distance oneself from, after looking at so much of poverty and suffering. So that's how, I think the perspective comes into play, or, whether one is biased or one can be neutral, I think would vary from one story to another.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you, Swati. The thing is, my first book, Exit Interview, which was on the life of a woman journalist, it was a fiction, but it was totally based on many of my personal experiences, and also on other women's experiences in our profession. And it has happened to me that, I've got calls and people have said, this was the incident you've written about, right? This is the person you've written about, right? So it happens. You cannot be objective all the time. And the suffering or the good things, there are problems in every profession. So problems and good side of the profession that I wrote about, of course, had my bias, my subjectivity. It wasn't objective. But I called it non-fiction, although it was research-based, but that is fiction, sorry. But that is the thing, like if you say fiction, then you can let your subjectivity seep in like anything and let it go at times and not worry that, if you are being right or exactly wrong that way. Absolutely.
Swati, which my original question actually, which we kind of lost sight of, when these, say, assignments came to you about write about Milkha Singh, did you pick these personalities
my
yourself?
editor and we discussed together, and we wanted to bring the stories of those who need, I think, to be celebrated more. Like when I said, when I read out from the Chakraborty book, when we read history as young students, or the history that my child reads, so that is all, I mean, a large part of it is about kings and battles. And in comparison, it's very little we know about the lives of ordinary people, the lives of women, Dalits and Adivasis. So my editor, publisher, Sudeshna and I, we discussed the names and finalized the names, and we felt the need to tell these stories that young readers should know about. And the lives that, when we are talking about a certain period in history, for example, the 19th century, the early 20th century, when we are talking about Indian history, we are talking about the freedom movement. We are talking about the lives of the revolutionaries who fought the British, but this period also had, we are not talking about so much about the anguish of young little girls who could not go to school. We are not telling the young readers about the caste system. So we felt the need to write, it's not that they have not been written at all, they have been written, but we felt that these lives, when we are talking about incredible lives, incredible Indians, we need to talk, celebrate these lives more.
What about Milkha Singh? Where does he come into this? This is a very odd, we have Savitribai Phule, you expect Jhalkari Bai, okay, Birsa Munda,
Yeah.
Milkha Singh.
Milkha
Why
Singh,
Milkha Singh?
I feel that, any list of incredible Indians, to me, he's a big, big hero. I mean, because, and I feel that young readers, they need to know about Milkha Singh because of the way he turned his, suffering and sorrow into great success. These are inspirational stories, and I think any list of incredible Indians, incredible life, should always have Milkha Singh. That's what I believe in. His life, I think children, when you give them certain books, you want to talk more about, happy things, things which make them happy. We do not, we as parents, as teachers, as authors, we tend to avoid telling young readers certain things. So I think what he suffered as a teenager, Milkha Singh, and how he became the person that he was, the sports person that he was, any child of 10 or 15, or if they went through that, what would they have done? It's good to know about the life of a person who could achieve that incredible success after what he went through. So I think that there is a need to know more about Milkha Singh. Even if we know him, what he achieved, if we know more about his life, I think that is very important.
Okay, fair enough. Both of you have written books. Just before we took the stage here, we were doing interviews backstage, all of us. And I don't know about you, but I was asked the question, where do you think journalism is headed? Is journalism still alive even? Okay. Now I wanted to, where do you think journalism is headed? Is journalism alive even? Okay. Now I want to just twist that question around a little. Both of you have written printed books in an age when everybody is saying that nobody is reading anymore. Nobody reads books anymore. We are getting all our information from the net, from wherever, TV, movies, wherever, audio-visual content, digital content. Nobody is reading books anymore. Where do you see your books going? Do you want to turn them into digital publications so that more people read them? I guess what I'm asking you is, what were your thoughts when you started writing about, who did you want to reach with these books? And do you think the print medium is the best way to reach them?
Absolutely. Reading a book is the best thing any person can do, be it a child or be it an adult. Although my son has gifted me a Kindle, which we share, but holding a book is something else. And my books are available both as a ebook, and as a paperback. But I feel that when you have an ebook, the reach is further, because internationally people are all reading on the Kindle. So as writers, we win that way because the reach becomes
I have a problem
much
with
better.
the medium, as in, you don't lament the death of print, or you don't necessarily subscribe to that view that, print is going and nobody is
No,
reading.
not at all.
Feel we are
Both are there together, because people who read the Kindle also like to have a stack of books by their bedside, because that feeling will always be there. Your Kindle can't satisfy that feeling. So
I prefer to read books, and I think we should be thankful to our editors, to the publishers who let us write, who are publishing the books. So I think
when
we
you are
should
at the
not be
book fair
worried as
today, you have
authors
a list of books to buy, right? So that thing is something else that will never go. And when you go back home with a bunch of books, no matter how much you download on your Kindle, and that is different.
I don't know. We'll throw the session open to questions from the audience. I don't know if the audience agrees with this, particularly with Swati, whose readership is, say, 10 to 15. Your reader base, target readers.
Yeah, for the young readers, it depends. Like for this
Series.
it is 10 plus.
10 plus.
Yeah.
Did you ever have doubts while creating this series? Doubts about, who will 10-year-olds actually read these books? Do I need to put them in some other kind of format for 10-year-olds to read? Did these thoughts or doubts ever cross your mind?
Actually, for an earlier book, for my earlier books, I visited a lot of, I generally visit, and I also interact. I do some sessions on gender. So I constantly keep meeting young people, and I know that they do love to read. So I do not have any doubt about that. I mean, with this, I don't know how you will react to that,
that's
but
very
they
heartening
do
to
read,
hear.
and I know a lot of readers. My son reads a lot, though our tastes are very different. He reads different things. But I know a lot of young readers who love reading. So I never have any doubt that there will be any dearth of readership.
I think that's a very cheering thought on which to end. Because if you have any questions, I know you haven't read the books, you probably don't know much about them. If you have any general observations, thoughts, we have about 7 or 8 minutes to spare, unless there is anything else you'd like to talk about. We can ask the audience to participate. Anybody? Any observations on reading, young readers?
I'm so sorry, but I think we've run out of time. We need
Which is excellent.
yeah,
Absolutely.
we need to
No
wrap
problem.
up this session right now if that's not a problem.
Yes,
The governor is on
we
his way.
started late and we are ending early so that we
Okay.
can pull
so see how,
pull
how
the
as
scheduling back.
journalists, we are so much on deadline. We follow the
We're so
deadline.
deadline
no
bound.
matter what.
We are deadline. We have been programmed to follow deadline. Yeah, because of the governors coming and the security checking is going to happen and the dogs are going to come in. So we will end here. Unfortunately, please consider my offer revoked. There is no time for questions. Thank you very much, Amrita. Thank you, Swati.
Thank you, Yajnaseni. Thank you, Swati.
I
It's
hope
a
you read their books because they're
pleasure.
fascinating.
Thank you.
Fascinating books. Thank you very much.
Thank you to our panelists, and Shujata Di will give everyone a token of her appreciation.